What if I told you that a Mexican national living in Alabama just pled guilty to fraudulently voting in both the 2022 midterms and the 2024 presidential election? That the one person standing between Republicans and the Save America Act is an Obama-era Democrat appointee who could be fired at literally any moment. That President Trump just publicly called out his own Senate leader on Truth Social and told him to get it done or face the consequences. And that House Speaker Mike Johnson just went on national television and declared that Republicans are not only going to hold the House in November, but are going to grow their majority. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. The single most important fight in American politics right now is not happening on a battlefield. It is not happening at the border. It is happening inside the United States Senate behind closed doors in a procedural war that most Americans do not even know exists. And at the center of that fight is a bill called the Save America Act, a piece of legislation so common sense and so overwhelmingly popular that over 95% of Americans agree with its core principle. And yet, it cannot get passed. Not because the votes are not there, not because the American people do not want it, but because one single unelected bureaucrat appointed by Barack Obama and Reid is standing in the way. And the one man who has the power to remove her is refusing to act. Until now. Because President Trump just changed the game. If you believe that only American citizens should be allowed to vote in American elections, and that no unelected Obama appointee should have the power to block the will of the American people, smash that like button right now. Every click sends a message to Washington that we are watching, we are paying attention, and we are not going away until the Save America Act is signed into law. Because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what the Save America Act is and why it matters. How a single Obama-era appointee has been used as a shield to block it. What President Trump's brand new plan is to finally force it across the finish line. And why the Democrats are terrified of what happens if this bill becomes law. Now let me start with the bombshell that broke this morning, because this is the story that proves beyond any shadow of a doubt why the Save America Act is not just important, but absolutely urgent. A Mexican national living in the state of Alabama just pled guilty to 2 counts of fraudulent voting. 2 counts. This individual, who is not a United States citizen, voted in the 2022 midterm elections and voted again in the 2024 presidential election. This person walked into a polling place, cast a ballot, and canceled out the vote of a legitimate American citizen. Twice. Now think about what we have been told for years. Think about the narrative that the Democrats and their allies in the media have been shoving down our throats for decades. They told us that non-citizen voting does not happen. They said it was impossible. Then when we proved it was possible, they said nobody was actually doing it. Then when we showed them evidence that people were doing it, they said it was so rare that it was inconsequential. Then when we showed them it was not inconsequential, they said that if you even talk about it, you are a racist. That has been the progression. Denial, deflection, minimization, and then straight to calling you a bigot for caring about the integrity of your own elections. And yet here we are, again, another case, another non-citizen, another fraudulent vote, another American whose voice was diluted because someone who has no right to participate in our democracy participated anyway. And this is not an isolated incident. This is a pattern. It keeps happening over and over and over again. And every single time it happens, every single time a non-citizen casts an illegal ballot, your vote means less. My vote means less. The franchise that generations of Americans fought and died to protect gets a little weaker, a little more diluted, a little less sacred. And the Democrats have the audacity to tell us this is not a problem. This is why the Save America Act exists. This is why President Trump has made it his #1 legislative priority. And this is why the fight to get it passed is the most important fight in Washington right now. Now, let me explain what the Save America Act actually does and why the Democrats are so desperate to stop it. The Save America Act is straightforward. It requires proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections. And it requires photo identification to cast a ballot. That is it. Proof of citizenship and photo ID. 2 requirements so basic, so common sense, so universally supported that when you poll the American people, over 95% agree. 95%. You cannot get 95% of Americans to agree on what day of the week it is, but you can get 95% to agree that you should have to prove you are a citizen to vote in your own country's elections. And it is not just Republicans. Over 70% of Democrats support voter ID and proof of citizenship requirements. 70% of their own base. The rank and file Democrats out there in the real world, the ones who go to work every day and pay their taxes and raise their families, they think this is common sense. Because it is common sense. Every serious democracy on earth requires identification to vote. And yet not a single Democrat in the House of Representatives and not a single Democrat in the Senate will vote for it. Not one. Zero. Let that number sit with you. Over 70% of Democrat voters support it, and 0% of Democrat politicians will vote for it. Does that not tell you everything you need to know about whose interest the Democrat Party actually serves? They will not vote for it because they benefit from the current system. They benefit from the chaos. They benefit from the lack of verification. They benefit from a system where non-citizens can and do slip through the cracks and cast ballots. They do not want election integrity because election integrity is bad for their business. Now, the House of Representatives has already passed this legislation. Not once, not twice, 3 times. Mike Johnson and the Republican House majority have sent the Save America Act, or its previous iteration, the SAFE Act, to the Senate 3 separate times. And every single time, it has died in the Senate. Not because the Senate does not have the votes. The Senate has the votes. The problem is a procedural obstacle. And this is where the story gets infuriating. Now, let me explain the Senate parliamentarian situation, because I need you to understand how one unelected person has been used to block the will of 330 million Americans. In the United States Senate, most bills require 60 votes to pass because of the filibuster. Republicans currently have a majority, but they do not have 60 seats. They do not have anywhere close to 60 seats. And since not a single Democrat will vote for the Save America Act, the normal legislative process is a dead end. 0 Democrat votes means the 60-vote threshold is impossible. But there is another path. It is called budget reconciliation. Reconciliation bills only need 50 votes to pass, not 60. And with Vice President J.D. Vance as the tiebreaker, Republicans effectively have those 50 votes. So the plan is simple. Attach the Save America Act to a reconciliation budget bill and pass it with 50 votes, bypassing the filibuster entirely. Here is the catch. Reconciliation bills are supposed to be exclusively budgetary in nature. They are supposed to deal with spending, revenue, and the federal budget. And the person who decides what qualifies as budgetary and what does not is someone called the Senate parliamentarian. Now, here is where it gets truly outrageous. The current Senate parliamentarian is a woman named Elizabeth MacDonough, and she was appointed during the Obama era by the Democrats. Specifically, she was put in place by Senator Reid, the Democrat Senate leader who ran the chamber with an iron fist for years. This is an Obama-era Democrat appointee who is currently serving as the gatekeeper for what can and cannot be included in Republican reconciliation bills. And guess who has been relying on this Obama appointee to block the Save America Act? Senate Republican leader John Thune. Thune has been using the parliamentarian as his excuse. He has been leaning on her to rule that the Save America Act is not budgetary in nature and therefore cannot be included in reconciliation. He has been hiding behind an unelected Democrat appointee to avoid taking a vote that his own base overwhelmingly supports. But here is what John Thune does not want you to know. The Senate parliamentarian can be replaced at any time, any moment, without a vote, without a hearing, without a process. The Senate leader has the exclusive, singular, unilateral authority to replace the parliamentarian whenever he wants. And Senate leaders have done exactly that throughout American history. It has happened time and time and time again. Replacing the parliamentarian is not unprecedented. It is not extraordinary. It is not controversial. It is a well-established practice with decades of precedent behind it. John Thune could pick up the phone right now and replace Elizabeth MacDonough before lunch. He has chosen not to. He has had the power this entire time, and he has refused to use it. And the question every American should be asking is why? And that is exactly the question President Trump just asked, publicly, on Truth Social, in front of the entire world. Now let me read you what the president posted, because this is the moment where everything changes. President Trump went on Truth Social and called out John Thune directly. He pointed out that Republicans have shockingly kept the very important position of parliamentarian in the hands of a woman who was appointed by Barack Obama and Reid. He called out the fact that over the years, she has been brutal to Republicans, but not so much to the Democrats. He asked the obvious question that millions of Americans have been screaming. Why has she not been replaced? And then he says something that should send a chill down the spine of every Republican senator in Washington. He said that Republicans play a very soft game compared to the Democrats. He said that is their single biggest disadvantage in politics. He said the Democrats cheat, lie, and steal, especially when it comes to votes in elections, but they stick together. Meanwhile, the Republicans allow people like this Obama-era parliamentarian to stay in power and block the agenda that the American people voted for. And then he laid out the stakes in terms so clear that nobody can pretend they did not understand. He said, if we do not pass the Save America Act, you will never see another Republican president again. Not might not, will not, never. Think about that. Let that sink in. And he explained exactly why. The Democrats will end up with 2 additional states, Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, and all that comes with it. 4 new Democrat senators, multiple new Democrat congressmen, additional electoral college votes, and they will also pack the United States Supreme Court. Their dream number? 21 justices, 21 Supreme Court justices appointed by Democrats, the end of the conservative judiciary for a generation or more. And then he addressed the filibuster directly. He said the Democrats will eliminate the filibuster on the first day they get the opportunity. He said Republicans refuse to do it because they believe Democrats never will. And he said Republicans are wrong. The Democrats will do it. They have told us they will do it. They have shown us they will do it. And if Republicans do not act first, they will be left standing there with nothing when the Democrats finally pull the trigger. President Trump finished his statement by telling Republicans to get smart and tough, or they will all be looking for a job much sooner than they thought possible. That is not a suggestion. That is a warning. From the President of the United States to his own party. Now, here's what makes this moment different from every other time people have talked about the Save America Act. President Trump is not just making statements. He is deploying a strategy, a multi-front pressure campaign designed to leave John Thune and the Senate Republicans with absolutely nowhere to hide. Trump posted a second statement on Truth Social that takes this to a whole new level. He said, and I need you to hear this clearly, that the Republican House should staple the Save America Act to everything it sends to the Senate. Everything. Not just reconciliation, everything. Every bill, every resolution, every piece of legislation that leaves the House of Representatives should have the Save America Act attached to it. And what does that mean in practice? It means that nothing gets to the president's desk without the Save America Act included. Nothing gets signed, nothing becomes law. The entire legislative agenda of the United States government grinds to a halt until election integrity is addressed. Trump is telling the Senate that if they want anything from him, if they want a single signature on a single piece of legislation, the Save America Act had better be part of the package. That is hardball. That is leverage. That is a president who understands that the survival of the republic depends on election integrity and is willing to put everything on the line to make it happen. And here is the best part. He is not alone. House Speaker Mike Johnson is completely on board. Johnson went on national television and confirmed the strategy. He said they are going to attach the Save America Act to the next reconciliation packet and send it to the Senate. He confirmed that the House has already passed this legislation 3 times and they will do it again. He made it clear that the reconciliation route is the path forward because the 60-vote threshold in the Senate is not achievable with 0 Democrat support. And then Johnson said something that should make every American feel a whole lot better about November. He said the Republicans are bullish, not cautiously optimistic, not hopeful, bullish. He said they are going to defy history and grow the House majority. He is not just talking about holding the line, he is talking about expanding it. And he quoted Newt Gingrich, who crystallized the entire 2026 midterm election in one sentence. Gingrich told Johnson that this is not a contract with America year. The Republicans already did that in 2024, and they have fulfilled those promises. This is a contrast for America election, a contrast between common sense, which is what Republicans represent, and crazy. And right now, the Democrats are giving the American people all the contrast they could ever need. Now, let me tell you why Mike Johnson's confidence is not just talk, because the numbers back him up. Right now, across the country, Republicans have 213 locked-in congressional House seats. The Democrats have 206. There are 16 toss-up seats, and you only need 218 to control the House. That means Republicans need to win 5 of 16 toss-ups. 5. Just 5. They could lose 11 of the 16 and still hold the majority. And consider what else is happening. The generic ballot has swung dramatically toward Republicans. Voter registration trends are surging for the GOP in state after state. The RNC has over $123 million cash on hand and zero debt, while the DNC is sitting on $14 million with $17 million in debt. Congressional redistricting across 7 states is projected to hand Republicans as many as 15 additional House seats before the campaign even begins. Johnson also pointed out something that the media consistently ignores. In the 16 months since Republicans took over the House, they have passed over 700 pieces of legislation. 700, focused on bringing down costs, fixing the disasters created by 4 years of the Biden administration, and delivering on the promises they made to the American people. That is a record to run on. That is a record that voters can see and feel and measure. And there is one more thing to keep in mind. If Republicans lose the House, Mike Johnson loses his job as Speaker. If Democrats regain control, they will immediately file articles of impeachment against President Trump. Johnson knows what is at stake. Trump knows what is at stake. And neither one of them is panicking. Neither one of them is hedging. They are both playing offense. They are both supremely confident. And they both have access to information and internal polling that you and I do not. That tells you something. The Save America Act is the linchpin. It is the piece that locks everything else into place. Without election integrity, nothing else matters. You can cut taxes, secure the border, rebuild the military, and negotiate the greatest trade deals in history. But if the other side can manufacture votes, if non-citizens can walk into polling places and cancel out legitimate ballots, if the franchise itself is compromised, then none of it is permanent. None of it is safe. Every victory becomes temporary because the next election can be stolen. That is why Trump is going to the mat on this. That is why he is willing to hold the entire legislative agenda hostage. That is why he publicly called out his own Senate leader on social media and told him to get tough or get out. Because this is not politics. This is survival. The survival of the republic depends on whether the people who vote in our elections are actually citizens of this country. Full stop. The Democrats know this. They know that if the Save America Act becomes law, their path to power narrows dramatically. They know that if every voter has to prove citizenship and show ID, the margins they depend on in swing states start to evaporate. They know that the chaos and ambiguity they have exploited for decades gets replaced with verification and accountability. And that terrifies them more than anything else in the world. The pressure campaign is on. Trump is pushing. Johnson is pushing. The American people are pushing. The question now is whether John Thune is going to do his job, replace the Obama-era parliamentarian, and let the Senate vote on the Save America Act through reconciliation. Or whether he is going to continue hiding behind procedural excuses while the integrity of American elections hangs in the balance. The American people have made their position clear. 95% support. 70% of Democrats support it. The House has passed it 3 times. The president is demanding it. The votes are there. The only thing standing in the way is one unelected bureaucrat and one Senate leader who refuses to pick up the phone. It is time. Replace the parliamentarian, pass the Save America Act, and let the American people decide their own future with elections they can actually trust. Don't stop here. The fight for election integrity is heating up, and President Trump's pressure campaign on the Senate is just getting started. Click on the next video and join us as we continue to cover the battle for the Save America Act and every critical development heading into the most important midterm election of our lifetime.